The subtitle of Frankenstein, of course, is the modern Prometheus. Prometheus being the figure for humanity's acquisition of fire, godlike creative power. Um, and there's something kind of, so what difference does it make to call it the modern Prometheus? There's a kind of redundancy in that, because modernity itself, it, I think modernity implies a kind of Promethean claim, to awaking from history, self determination in the now, creating a new world. Um, there's, the thing about modernity, it's always being repeated, it's like what does modern mean? Does it mean the Renaissance? Um, does it mean the Industrial Revolution? Um, it can it each generation is kind of its new modernity. It's new, making a new kind of Promethean claim. So even that subtitle has a kind of pregnant irony. Maybe it's already suggesting this kind of uh, problematic uh, aspiration. Um, and I think this is borne out by the rather dark epigraph. Um, did I request thee, Maker, from my clay to mold me, man? Did I solicit thee from darkness to promote me? Um, didn't ask to be here. This self contempt. I hate myself, so I'm blaming you for it. Um, uh, it's a kind of disease of the mind, and he's um, as and a wish to return to the clay, to the darkness. Conclusion, I think, echoes that epigraph. Um, this consuming resentment um, that the creature expresses. Um, that it reminds me of when Frankenstein says of Justine that she has it better than him because she knows she's innocent. Um, he's made he's taking pride in his resentment. Again, this idea of the toxic masculinity is really hard to avoid. Um, the the complaint, the taking pride in disappointment, that idea of involuntary celibacy. As these characters express this to a very extreme degree. Complaint here is familiar to us all, whether we acknowledge it to ourselves or not. None of us ask to be here. We find ourselves created. It's a fate we didn't ask for. We find ourselves in our bodies and in our worlds. It's a gift we didn't ask for. So this resentment, these questions at least, if not this resentment, touch on something deep in humanity. Check this out. This is a little clip from the Firstborn movie, where Matt Damon wakes up. He's a spy with amnesia, and he's surprised to find that he can speak language. He can do things with his body that he's surprised to discover. And I think that's us. That I think that's why this movie's compelling. Is that's us. We wake up already ourselves, already part of the world, already interacting and discover ourselves within this um, web of activity and materiality.
Können Sie die Schilder nicht lesen?
So, aufstehen. Los, auf jetzt.
Der Park ist geschlossen, Sie können hier nicht schlafen.
All right.
Zeigen Sie mir Ihren Ausweis.
No, I don't.
Ihre Papiere.
I don't have any papers. I lost meine Papiere. Ich habe sie verloren.
Genug, stehen Sie jetzt auf.
Ich muss schlafen.
Los, hoch. Hey, aufstehen. Hoch.
So that's pretty interesting to think about. I think, to think we kind of have a tendency to play it cool. Like, yeah, I know I'm me. There's nothing, I'm not surprised by that at all. But to, put it in the context here of the creature, of Satan, it's really, romantic. It's this, the power of the sublime is to kind of put the normal reality all in question. And that's political power. That's why Satan is sort of a image of freedom for poets like Percy Shelley and Byron. And I mean, I think they're touching on something as Milton as well, as William Blake said, Milton was of the devil's party. That's why he wrote so well of Satan and so kind of uninspired when he's voicing God. They're getting at something satanic about our idea of freedom and and love, everything that our society espouses as the point of life, have this dangerous side that is made more dangerous by ignoring it, repressing it. That's the idea of the return of the repressed. I mentioned last time how I like. It's cool when the word "fuck" gets used. Gets put to poetic use, and this may be, or is kind of undeniably the canonical example. Hence the title. This be the verse. It's about reproduction. It's about this resentment of your parents, of history, but it's about verse. It's about the capacity to say your fate, to share your fate, to sing your fate, turn it around. The word verse means to turn. It's amazing the depth of the resentment. This poem, even as it is funny, the poem itself is fucking you up. It's by telling you how fucked up you are. So in terms of a kind of narrative, objective picture that the poem is giving you, you're totally fucked. But the point is that it's a poem. That's the only point that you can sing it. They fuck you up, your mom and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had and add some extra just for you. But they were fucked up in their turn by fools in old-style hats and coats who half the time were soppy stern and half at one another's throats. Man hands on misery to man, the miserable series of my existence. It deepens like a coastal shelf. Get out as early as you can and don't have any kids yourself. It's, the darkness and distance, the coastal shelf, the abyss. But it's a verse. It's a different alternate reproduction is singing along. The sheer rhyme, the sheer poetic solidarity of singing is another form of reproduction. These two kinds of reproduction are juxtaposed really precisely in the creature's initial birth scene, where we hear Victor's, again, self-pitying narrative of how beautiful he intended the creature to be. I'd selected his features as beautiful. His limbs were in proportion. I endeavored to form him with infinite pains and care. He was betrayed by what? By the fact that he exists. By the moment the creature looks back at him with his own eyes, confronts Victor with his selfhood, with the fact that he has a self beyond Victor's engineering and control. And, this is like every parent, too. Every parent, you cannot but have an intention for your children, an expectation. It would be pathological not to. It's just part of caring about them is to have expectation. And then a stranger appears who's their own person, and you have to bond with that stranger. And that's what Victor can't do. So what's really interesting in terms of reading bodies about this passage here is to try to disentangle Victor's prejudicial narrative from what's actually going on. His pervasive characterization of the monstrosity of the creature makes it hard to see the creature otherwise. But I think the way it's written invites us to notice a different possibility. So let's look down here. When the creature appears again, after he's, having these dreams of kind of erotic bliss with Elizabeth, by the dim and yellow light of the moon, that correlation of the creature with the moon again. I beheld the wretch, the miserable monster. This kind of over determination of its monstrosity, right? It suggests a kind of defensiveness. He held up the curtain of the bed, and his eyes, if eyes they may be called. You put him in there. You know their eyes were fixed on me. His jaws opened, and he muttered some inarticulate sounds while a grin wrinkled his cheeks. He might have spoken, but I did not hear. One hand was stretched out, seemingly to detain me, but I escaped. So, this is all colored by Victor's horror. So it's just a passage about Victor, not about the creature. If we just read and try to get a glimpse of the creature, it's not so certain that it's, just a picture of a baby reaching for its parent. I think especially, the idea of infans means without speech. And so that's what we confront. That's what I've been talking about is that infancy, we live as infants and then we're born into language already there, already emotionally bonded, already immersed in the world. So what is our relationship to this creature without speech? Victor, again, finds it monstrous, but I think we negotiate. That's again part of, I think, our relationship with infants or children is negotiation with their otherness, their potential monstrosity, their potential strangeness. When we speak of the baby's first smile, it's an interesting question how we put that label on them. It's not, they don't think of themselves as smiling. They think, who knows? But you see all this random twitching in a baby and random movements, and then at a certain point we start calling it intentional behavior. We start situating it in our world of meanings, so organizing their body. Anyways, this reaching out of the monster, these inarticulate sounds, this hideous grin. Maybe it's just a baby reaching out for its parent. And that key scene in the monster's sort of second birth story and sentimental education story, where he's so moved by the interaction between the child and the father, DeLacy. That's the image of the kind of parental embrace that he is denied here. So here we can really get a sense of what it means to read the monster's body, I think. In this comparison with the later scene of DeLacy and the girl and the intense, sublime experience seeing that causes for the creature, because there we're getting a crystallization of what he needed here and didn't get. In that image, he's seeing his desire, he's feeling his self. And as I said, that, and so are we. We're empathizing. We're as we read that, we participate in his act of empathizing, and that's what he is. He's a self-recognizing by way of empathizing, and that parallels the dream. He's finding himself in a dream of what he lacks. And that's Safie too. Like she's chasing her mother's dream even while she's kind of enslaved, just like her mother was. So this rhythm of empathy, transmission of dreams, is a rhythm of bodies. It's a way of communicating about bodies. We're social creatures and exist in the network of language, and I was saying we as infants exist in a kind of network of motion and bonding environment, and then we try to integrate that into language, which is not always a easy transition, which can, this Frankenstein is about patriarchy and the violence that integration into the symbolic order of society can entail. But at the same time, the novel is offering us a different society, the society of embodied readers. I want to sound flippant, but that's what I mean by blues ironies. This sort of turning, singing sorrow turns it into pleasure. I mean, the irony there is that there's salvation in the sheer singing itself, nothing else. Just the acknowledgement, of this inescapable pain, that the verse itself is deepening by, telling you how fucked up you are. Get out as early as you can and don't have any kids yourself. It's sort of telling you to commit suicide. The poem itself is, but there's a redemption in, and society, new community is created by the act of singing, by sharing in the song. A new form of reproduction is mobilized. So the salvation of singing, a verse turning the nihilistic story around, flipping the script, is like a positive contagion. I think the point is that, our sense of our control over the world is totally estimated. And that clinging to that delusion turns us against the world, makes us violent. This is what I think bringing out the web of environmental interaction means. And it suggests that there's a queerness, a strangeness to life per se that our normative, objective view of the world suppresses. So I take Blake at his word here when he speaks of the love communicated by the disease. This is, just like Dracula, that there's a kind of truth that the modern world has suppressed, that just a return of the repressed, that Dracula's communicating, and there's a therapeutic, because we have a need for it, a dark secret love. It seems destructive, but it's for our own good on some level, or we're asking for it, we need it. Viruses are integral to evolution. They're built into our DNA. That's played a huge part in our actual adaptation, and as a species, on the biological level. But it's also interesting to think about how we, as I was just saying about poetry, reproduce ourselves culturally. And through mythology, through stories and songs, and the wisdom, the amount of truth that gets communicated, wisdom about the world, again, but like positive contagion that gets communicated through myths like the vampire myth. The myths get passed down like biological adaptations because they work, because they communicate important information. And it turns out that the bats are extremely queer creatures. They're the only mammals who fly. And that is sort of the tip of the iceberg of their extraordinary biology. They, mammals, the lifespan of mammals correlates very directly to their size. All mammals except for bats. Bats can live for 40 years. Equivalent size a mammal is a mouse that lives like 3 years. And that's because bats have some sort of extraordinary resistance to inflammation, which is, what causes aging, the breakdown of the body. And this resistance to inflammation also it provides them with an exceptionally strong immune system. So they can carry which makes them a huge vector for viruses. They can carry all these viruses without getting sick, including viruses that affect humans, as we're experiencing really directly right now. So bats are really an amazing symbol for this. I mean, just kind of mind-blowingly a perfect symbol for the our repressed embodied enmeshment in the environment, a vestigial, this age-old legacy and dependence upon embodied environmental interaction that are that we fail to acknowledge in our self-conception, our conception of our reproduction and understanding of the world. Coleridge represents our queer condition of embodiment, or queer implication in this web of environmental embodiment by his amazing description of frost formation, the secret ministry of frost. And he correlates it with the work of our mind, the way in which we imagine frost. So, the work of the sublime happens. Notice, so he's describing the still night in which crystals form without the help of any wind, just by the cooling air draws these crystals out of the air. It's amazing. And so notice the poetic techniques he uses to prompt this activity of our imagination, this repetition. The owlet's cry creates an experience of time. Remember, I was talking about now is the time. Here's a great example of a poem kind of organizing our experience of time. The two owl cries. One is in the narrative past. The owlet's cry came loud, and then the next is in the present. And hark again, it's happening now. It draws us out. So sort of a moment of estrangement effect where the owl bursts into the moment of the present of the poem, of the speaking of the poem. And again, there's a kind of dialectic with the silence. The loudness of the cry accentuates the sense of surrounding silence. It's so great. It's as if he activates the silence surrounding you as you read, and connects that with this image he's drawing of the secret ministry, the activity of frost crystal formation. So that's what he means here, this sort of vexed thought, abstruser musings. He's talking about this sort of formation in the mind of these same crystals. So it sort of plays with the rhythm of grammar here. And number. The populous village and the numberless goings-on of life. So see how these different formulations, sea, hill, and wood, and then sea and hill and wood, organize the environment and different count the items of the environment in different ways. And again, it sort of dissolves into a kind of sublime. It's uncountable. This populous village, sea and hill and wood, it's like it could go on forever. The numberless goings-on of life, inaudible as dreams. So again, the silence becomes a medium of this and unthinkable, diverse and rich activity. What George Eliot, in the most famous line of Middlemarch, calls the roar on the other side of silence. And I just want to note here, because it's maybe hard to notice on your first reading, He's talking about ice, but he's also talking about fire, these kind of primal elements. And refers to his fire, a similar kind of inaudible activity created by the heating air in his fire, expanding and causing this little ash film to flutter and quiver. So again, these rhythms of activity evoke our immersion in the web of the material world. Ministry of Frost suggests a religious ministry, sort of like the Ancient Mariner, sort of like a wandering preacher. But this is a gospel of strangeness. That's the redemptive news is the strangeness, the infinite strangeness of the world, the numberless goings on. So the great universal teacher will mold thy spirit and by giving make it ask. This is key idea that the gift of the world is to make us ask. That's the gift. So we to make us curious, to make us question. So, whereas, Satan in Paradise Lost is resenting, asking why he was given this fate, in resentment for it. Here, Coleridge is encouraging us to recognize this question as a gift. You get to ask. The poem ends with a total tour de force of kind of web imagery, evoking the different seasons, whether the snow melts or whether the icicle drop, again, heard only in the trances of the blast, the eavesdrops, you only hear them when the wind stops. So it's like that, again, is sort of a rhythm of silence. That, even when we don't hear the wind, it's the wind is present in its absence. So again, a kind of environmental interaction in time. Then he suggests how the drops are frozen up by the secret ministry of frost. She'll hang them up in silent icicles, quietly shining to the quiet moon. Oh, amazing! Another moon image. So here the moon's reflected light is reflected again in the icicles. This is also sort of animated in time. It's reflects the movement of the air in the atmosphere, like William Blake's infinity in a grain of sand. It's in the smallest detail of life. You can tease out interaction with the whole kind of cosmic interaction of everything with everything else. The first version of the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, it refers to the poem as frost. There's a pun that the word rhyme means both a nursery rhyme, poem, and rhyme frost. So he's literally characterizing the poem here as what I was calling a positive contagion, spreading the gospel of strangeness, the Ancient Mariner, compelling our attention. We don't know why. His story is kind of a non-story. He doesn't know why he killed the albatross, doesn't know why he blessed the snakes, and the albatross fell from his neck. But he gives us by making us ask. His gift is to make us ask. make us ask. If the poem is for us, he wanders the land, he says at the end, trying to find who's needs to hear his poem. And that's really the question it leaves us with is, did I need to hear this? I always really have to emphasize it's so, again, another sleight of hand. It's so tempting to feel like you understand the poem or that the poem can be reducible to its final messages of, loving all creatures, great and small. But while that's not wrong, I per se, it's wrong in the sense that it's all too accessible, all too clear, understandable. The real message of the poem is strangeness. That loving other creatures means an encounter with strangeness. Like that's what the poem offers. That's what the poem's about. Is a dark secret love, not the love that you is apparent and can grasp in a clean concept. Hence, this first version of the poem also ironizes the project of interpretation in the form of this gloss. Is sort of mocking. If you read through it, it's this. It's a kind of scholarly attempt to nail down the meanings. That is to say, eradicate the strangeness, remove the strangeness, and extract a particular story, particular meanings, which are themselves kind of ridiculous. It involves a lot of, I don't know, weirdly doctrinal superstitions. So we're leaving it left again with just the text, the strangeness of the text. So queer, uncanny embodiment. So as in Frankenstein, this subaltern communication, this communication among excluded bodies, strange bodies, becomes an alternate mode of social reproduction that's pointedly juxtaposed to the wedding, the official institution of social reproduction, healthy institution. This is an illicit community, a sad wisdom, dark secret love.